Hey guys, I recently interviewed my friend Kristin Pedemonti. She's an American storyteller who has done a lot of story-based projects across the world. I asked Kristin about her story-based projects and also how important it is to get out of our comfort zone. I think you're gonna enjoy the interview, so let's watch it. Okay, hello friends. I hope you're all doing well during this pandemic, wherever you are in this world. So today is April the 8th, and I have the honor and the privilege to talk to one of my best friends, Kristin Pedemonti. Hi, Kristin. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well today, and thank you so much for inviting me to share this time with you. I
Yeah,
really value you as a person, so thank you.
thank you so much. You're such an inspiration. And I'm gonna record this kind of interview. It's not actually an interview. It's two friends just talking about something which both think it is important for all of us these days, especially to get out of our comfort zone, to experience new things, and somehow don't tell people not to care about what they say. Okay, do whatever. If obviously that's not gonna hurt ourselves and others. So I wanted to introduce you, Kristen, but uh, I think I cannot do that even in an hour. So I just wanna read some of your achievements. So Kristen is a should I should I say that you're a full-time storyteller?
I am now not anymore, to be honest. I use storytelling maybe different than people might think of it because I
Mm-hmm.
do healing story work, more about the stories we carry inside our minds and our internal narrative, our self-talk, and how to overcome that when it's negative. So I'm a sort of a storyteller, but maybe not in the way many people think about storytelling.
Hmm. See,
I don't
Kristen,
know if that answers it.
that's perfect. I want to act like a politician now. So I started by saying that I'm gonna do something, but I'm gonna ask you to do it actually. Okay. So would you
Okay.
just tell us a little bit about yourself, just some of your achievements?
Oh, it's embarrassing to do that. Uh, okay, but yes, I will because you asked. So, the most recent, I will not call it an achievement, but the project that I'm doing now that I'm really grateful for, it's called Steer Your Story. So imagine being in a car and being in the driver's seat. And the idea is that every one of us has an internal story inside of our minds. It's called our self talk. And it's affected by different things, like maybe trauma that we experienced when we were growing up or as an adult. It's affected by the stories that we hear outside of ourselves. And it's affected by the things maybe our parents tell us and our grandparents tell us when we're growing up. This becomes a narrative inside our minds. So I created a program that is a healing from trauma program. And I'm really, like I said, grateful for it because I've been able to be in service for many survivors of different trauma, like abuse, addiction, domestic violence, homelessness, trafficking, and war. And so to be able to serve as a guide for these people to reflect and come to a new, more positive narrative inside their minds is something I'm very grateful for. So if people want to learn more about that, they can go to
Yeah.
www.steeryourstory.com. And that's the thing I'm most proud of, I would say, in this moment, not from ego, but from heart. And I also still work at the World Bank. So I work
Mhm.
very part time there, and I'm a consultant. And that's where the storytelling you mentioned, I teach presentation skills to staff there. And I really appreciate being able to be of service beyond the data, because behind every number is a human being and a human story. So that's what I'll share currently about what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I definitely ask you questions about that Steer Your Story project because that's really unique. I've never heard anything like that because it's like people talking to one another, sharing your stories without just necessarily having the idea that we are talking to a, I don't know, psychiatrist, to a specialist. It's just a human being to another human. And I know that's the core essence of that project. So I would definitely ask you questions about that. But I would
Okay.
also mention that Kristin had a couple of TED Talks, and you were a finalist, yeah?
Yeah.
One of, yeah, and she has received a lot of other awards that she doesn't talk about them.
Can I mention something I did out of my comfort zone though that might inspire your listeners and your readers? Is this is something I want to share that as an everyday ordinary person, it's all about the choices that we make in our life. And so I had a small home, and I'm grateful that I was able to have a home. It was not expensive. It was something I bought that was I could afford. I was in my early 30s when I bought that home. I was married at the time. I'm not married anymore, but we're good friends. So this house, eventually, we're divorced, and I decided that I did not need this house anymore. It was only me. And so I sold my house and most of my possessions, and then gave away the possessions I still had so I could be a full-time storyteller. And so I could create a project on literacy in Belize, which is a very small country in Central America. And that project was by invitation of someone there who shared with me their literacy rates dropped by 40% in 15 years' time. So there was a huge need for assistance. And I came in, not that I had answers, because I don't have the answers. I came in because I do have enthusiasm, a lot of enthusiasm. And I did have some skills from working with children for 15 years at that time. And I was a children's librarian at that time. So I really liked connecting children and teachers with reading materials, and then how the teachers could use it more dynamic in the classroom, and also to use their own culture, to use their stories that were very important to them, and how to use that to teach. And so the teachers and I, we worked together. It was a collaboration, and I really believe in collaborating. No one of us has all the answers. We work together, and that's how we create answers. And that's how we create a project that will continue on after we leave, because it's both parties, it's both sides coming together. And that's something I wanted to share, just that I'm not someone special. I'm just someone who makes certain choices, and everyone can make choices.
So, because I know a little bit more than our audience know about you. So, and by the way, we became friends. It was 7 years ago, yeah. Oh my god, I don't even remember. Was it 7 years ago or 8 years ago?
No, it's not. It's actually not as long as you think. It feels like a really long time because it's really special. But it was 2015, so it's 5 years. It's 5 years. 2015.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's 2000. No, it's 2015.
My
Yeah,
bad.
so it's 5 years. No, it's all okay.
Friends in a storytelling festival in Iran, in my home country, and that's a weird thing to happen for an American storyteller to come to Iran. But
Yes.
that was a very good experience. So we may even talk about that later. So,
I'm really glad you brought that up, actually. I mean, because it's one of the most treasured experiences of my entire life, of my whole entire life. That the people, that the administrators and that the dignitaries said yes in Iran to allow me to come as an American woman, it made my heart so happy. The first one. And it was, meeting you was such a highlight. And Amin, here's the thing about Amin. He also won't tell you how amazing he is. This is a man who has done so many projects bringing people together across different languages, across different beliefs, and really always seeing the heart of people. And I just think you have done such beautiful work. And he won't tell you about all the awards he's won either. So we'll just say that.
Yeah, so much. So, Kristin, I want to know what happens to someone's logic to sell her house and to go to a small country to do a storytelling project. Because if you want to add an example to the dictionary about getting out of one's comfort zone, you would be the example. To sell your house, no, seriously, to sell your house
Yeah.
and start a storytelling project in a very small country. Tell us what happened to you.
So I really have to say the biggest thing that happened was when I traveled to Belize initially, and I met local people, and it was a snorkel instructor. It was a younger person who we had a conversation. He had never met a storyteller before, and it was really him. It was his belief in my skills, and we emailed that entire summer. So we met July 5th. We emailed almost every day and struck up a friendship, a really strong friendship. And it was his belief in my skills, and that I always would say I don't have the answers, and he would say I know, but you have skill set that might be helpful for people. And it was his belief, and then it was also thinking, it was trusting. That's the other big thing I would invite your listeners and readers to really think about, is trust. That if you're called to do something like this, to trust it and listen to it. And I could not stop thinking about the idea. So that's something else to follow, is if it's an idea you think about when you fall asleep at night, you think about it when you wake up in the morning, maybe you need to act on it. And I mean, like you said, as long as it will not hurt anyone, and it's really for benefit, it's for really of service to other people, then you say yes. And you figure it out along the way. All of this was figured out along the way. You mentioned this earlier, don't worry about what other people think. I had a lot of people tell me I was crazy to do what I did, because I was 37 years old, newly divorced with no support. I left my full-time job and I sold my house, and they said, "Are you crazy?" And I said, "My heart and my mind, my whole spirit says I need to do this." And although the money part, and I did not use all the money from the sale of my house, I used some of it. So not all of it. But that experience of traveling village to village, of meeting teachers, talking to them, learning together, the gifts I received in the learning and in the relationships and the friendships were far greater than any amount of money you could ever imagine. And I think that, as I share, I think that's the key, is money is one tiny part of our lives that has become maybe too big sometimes. And maybe we get too focused on that. And I live very simply. I mean, for the people to know, I ate the local, so I had bananas or oranges like every day for breakfast. Rice and beans. I ate more rice and beans than you can imagine. I mean, every day, twice a day. So it's the idea of also, that's a sacrifice, is living very, very simply. I lived in a very small room that had a very small, like a bed and a table that was handmade out of a few pieces of wood, a chair that was made out of a few pieces of wood. It was a little bench, and that's all I had. And that's okay. How much do we really need? So that's something else to think about, is we need to have food. We do need to have food. We need to have air to breathe, and we need to have water to drink. I drank rainwater, because it was free. So it's thinking about, how can you live, and I know you do this too, how can we live simply so we can share and give?
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers it, but that was how it worked for me.
I've forgotten the true meaning of life, which is to be connected to other people, to have good memories, to enjoy life, and just,
yes,
it's simple.
It is very simple.
Yeah.
Well, and your country, and also Persian culture. So I want to share this with the listeners. I cried more, and Amin saw this. I cried more that week in Iran that I have in many years, and here's why. It was not out of sadness. It was because I witnessed so many acts of kindness and so much thoughtfulness every single day. And I would share, so Miriam was my translator. And Miriam, who, oh my gosh, they had so little sleep. And they translated not only our stories from the other people, the international tellers who were brought in, the translators and Amin translated all day as well. So imagine for 8 to 10, 12 hours in another language, how exhausting that is. And the kindness of being sure we understood each other so we could build bridges between each other. And the other thing was, I'm a vegetarian. And I remember saying that at one of the meals. So I try to not eat. I say, I don't eat anything with a face. That's the easiest way and the funniest way to say it. And I remember there was one meal where it was a very special meal. And they went back, one of the people cooking went back and made me a special dish with no meat. And I thought, that's amazing. Like, I'm the one that's the visitor. I felt like I need to be the one making an exception. They made the exception for me. So what I'm thinking that might be a value for the people listening to this or watching this is to think about, how can you be that person who's extending the kindness, who is sharing your gift and your skill, because all of you have a gift. So asking, how can I share this? Not what's in it for me, but how do I share this? If this gift was given to me, it's up to me to also share that to other people. And your country, Iran, taught me that, and Persian culture really emphasized that so much to me. So I just want to bring that into this. It's really something that was so important to me that I learned through you.
We all enjoyed that festival. It was a good experience, I guess.
It was amazing. It was amazing. It really, as I think back on it. So anyway, and I think really that's the key, and you mentioned it, is asking ourselves, how can I contribute? And I don't mean like, how can I mean, how can I contribute? What can I contribute? And trust it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kristin, now that you kind of talked about your experience of the storytelling festival in Iran, I want to ask you a question which I think is important to a lot of Iranian friends around the world.
Yes.
Because we never know who's going to watch this. You put something on the internet, you never know what happens.
Yes, who knows?
Yes. So probably because you're a special person, you are educated, you study, you're into storytelling, connecting people. Probably you didn't have as many stereotypes about Iran in your mind before coming to my country, in comparison to the general,
the average public person.
Yeah, person, as you say. But again, was it different than what you expected? And how did that kind of affect you as a person?
Because I already had Iranian friends, and years ago, I mean, when I was in college, I had 2 Iranian friends, so it goes back a long time for me. And I think that it wasn't different because I also have a mindset, and this comes from my grandmother. My grandmother on my mother's side, Annabelle Quigney, was a person who, the number one rule in the house was kindness to everyone, no exceptions. Everyone. No matter what they look like, no matter what religion, no matter what culture, no matter what economic background, no matter education, it was kindness for all. So she really planted a seed early in my heart and my mind about we're kind and we make no assumptions. So I think the only thing that I know, I was a bit uptight. I was very uptight when I was there. But it came from, I knew I was American, and I felt even more that I had to really be that bridge builder too, and wanted to be sure everything was from the heart, back and forth. And I know that sometimes people really laughed at me, like in the end, and in a loving way, not in a mean way, but in a loving way, like, Kristin, relax. And I would say, but I have to, it's really important because we're making peace together across this, and I have to be very careful. And it wasn't it was not out of fear. It was more out of, I want to respect and honor even more. But I think Oh, it's such a good question. And I'm sorry that I guess I'm not really answering it, but it wasn't different than what I expected. It was, well, maybe the vibrancy, like when we went for ice cream. So we all went to have ice cream in Tehran. And I think and your sense of humor the entire time, I don't know if you know this, but Amin has an amazing sense of humor. You probably know this. And the way, not only at the ice cream, but I'm thinking on the time we were on the bus together and we started doing the sing-alongs, and then you and Julian were doing impressions of each other, and we laughed a lot. And I think maybe that was a little bit of something I didn't expect, was all the laughter. All the laughter. Yeah, I think maybe I expected it to be a little more serious, and I love the laughter.
Yeah, Kristin, do you want to share your experience with that soldier? Because I may want to use that when I'm editing the video.
Yes.
If you want.
Oh my gosh. So the soldier part that Amin is referring to is, it was the last day of the festival, and we were all very tired. And there was a soldier sitting about halfway back in the auditorium. And I noticed at one point he was making eye contact, and it seemed like he was looking directly at me. And I got scared. I did. My first response was fear, because I thought, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? I may have done something wrong. And I'm American, which makes it even worse, because sadly, I'm sorry, there's no relationship between our countries. And I'm very, very sorry for that. And it makes my heart, if regular people could create the relationship. Anyway, that's another story. So the soldier, then he gets up out of his seat, and he's very tall, and he's waving something back and forth, and I can't tell what it is, but now I know he is right. His eye contact is right to me. And I'm so scared, and he comes walking down faster to the edge of the stage. I will tell you something I did that it's funny now, but it was not then, is I pulled Lillian. I don't know if you remember this part. I pulled Lillian, who was the Australian storyteller, kind of in front of me, which is awful, because I was so scared, and I was like holding on to her. And then the soldier is at the edge of the stage, and I can see what he has in his hand. It's his cell phone, and he's waving it back and forth, and now I can hear and understand him. And he's saying, America, America, I love your story. Photo. He wanted to take a picture. And I breathe, and okay. And he comes up on stage, and we stand so close. So he sends his daughter. She was maybe 8 or 9 years old, I think. And we take a picture. And then his wife comes up. We take a picture. And then he comes up. And I will, say it was the hardest not hugging someone of my entire life, because I knew culturally it would be not okay for me to hug. It would have been inappropriate. I need to honor culture. And it was so hard not to. And I didn't. I just stood there, and I thought, this is amazing to me, because here's a man, an Iranian male soldier, who wanted his picture with me, an American female storyteller. And it was the most beautiful. I cried so much. And I remember Miriam asking me, why are you crying? And I said, because this is so beautiful. If this person can reach across and we can build a bridge together, that means all of us can build a bridge. So that was my favorite. The power of storytelling. It's really the power of storytelling that could build a bridge between us. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that was a good moment. And I saw her, and I think you wrote about it.
I did. Yeah, I did. I shared on social media about that, and I shared the National Storytelling Network here in the United States has a magazine, and they had interviewed me, and I shared that moment as the most powerful moment I've ever experienced in storytelling. That's what story can do.
You kind of talked about your passion for hugging. So would you tell us about your experience after the economic crisis? Was it in 2009?
2008, 2009. Yeah. You talking about the free hugs?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I moved to New York City really at the moment in the month when the financial crisis was happening. So when the stock market crashed and the whole world, you were affected too. The whole world was affected by this. And I did not I did not start free hugs. There's a beautiful human being who lives in Australia. He goes by the name Juan Mann, and he had started the movement in 2001. So anyway, a group of us made free hug signs, and we went to it's a place in New York City called Union Square, and a lot of artists and creative people and young people go there, and a lot of tourists. And we just stood there with a sign that said free hugs, and we didn't know what would happen. And then people started to come up to us and hug, but it's not just about the hug. That's the tiniest part of it. What it's really about is connection and conversation with people. And so people would share things like, I remember so many people sharing deep personal things like, I just lost my job. I don't know how I'm going to tell my wife when I get home. Not kidding. Oh, I was going to kill myself. I was actually on my way to go kill myself. And this hug helped me to think differently. And they connect and talk to you. So from that day on, I started carrying my free hug sign all the time. And every Saturday I would go to this park and I would do free hugs then, but I always had my sign. So I would just hug people kind of all over. And when I started traveling to different countries, I would take my free hug sign with me. So I've hugged in 29 countries so far and across many cities, probably about, I'd say 30 or so in the United States. It's not something I do as often the last few years because now I do the healing story work for the mental stories inside. And now we can't free hug at all because of COVID-19. Like right now, you have to socially distance, which is also very difficult. I will be honest. I say that laughing, but it's very hard not to touch, not to have hugs. It's a very hard thing.
Away from each other, and we cannot meet. So it's just
no, right? Yeah, we're 3 hours. Yeah, in Virginia. I'm in Reston, Virginia right now. Yeah.
Map, so 3 to 4 hours probably. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that far, but far enough right now. And even if we were in the same place, we'd have to still be, because of what's happening right now currently. And I want everyone, by the way, please stay safe right now. Stay well. We're doing a service by following the guidelines of staying a little more far apart right now, and that's to keep more people well and from being sick.
So I think I have 3 important questions. So I'm going to ask them very quickly.
Okay.
So first, do you have any special moment or anything special from this Steer Your Story project that you want to share with us? I know you have probably tons of them, but 1 or 2 because of just
I will share the most powerful one for me so far. And that is, my dad was in the Air Force. And when he was only 17 years old, he was recruited from his high school to serve. And he was sent to Vietnam to translate messages that were sent from the Chinese. And it was a very high pressure job. And he was not allowed to talk to anybody about any of his experience or service. When he came home, veterans were not celebrated at that time at all. It was a very different time. And my dad had, so this is very sad, but I'm going to be very honest about it. My dad had 5 suicide attempts, and he died when I was 22. And the reason I share that with you is at Steer Your Story on tour, I did a program for 24 veterans. And there was a moment during the workshop, I was very nervous. I was very, very nervous. It was all men in the room and me. And they're looking at me kind of funny because I don't know if you can tell, like it's hidden, but I have like pink in my hair and I dress kind of different. And they're all staring at me. What can she tell us? And I share a little about my dad and how he could never share his experience. And that was part of what killed him. When we have to hold something inside and we can never share it, it's trauma and it affects us. So I'm leading the men through all of these reflection activities. And there's one moment where it gets very, very tense. It's a very tense moment. And I know this is a little bit of a long story, but it's important. So one of the men, we go around the room and we share who our heroes are and what some qualities of heroes. So everybody's sharing, they always are there for you. And a hero is never gives up, and a hero wants to protect you, and a hero is they just never give up and they persevere. And the last guy in the room, I asked him about his hero, and he says that his hero is Darth Vader from Star Wars. And the people, all the men in the room, you just hear them go, and they look at him and they say, Darth Vader is evil, though. Darth Vader is a mean, evil character. How can that be your hero? And I stop the group and I say, but what's underneath the cape? Think about the qualities of Darth Vader. He never gives up. He perseveres. He's very focused. He really keeps an eye on his principles, right? So underneath the mask and the cape, he's actually got the same qualities. It's how did he use them? He used them for negative. So each of us has the choice in our lives to use for positive instead of negative. The part that comes back to my dad is at that moment, I could feel like my dad was in the room. It was very strange. And one of the men in the room said, he raised his hand, he said, ma'am, this might sound really strange, but I think your dad is here with us. And I said, that's not so strange. And then he said, and I want to tell you something. Your dad, he can see you and he can hear you, and your dad is very proud of the work that you're doing. And I just started to cry because my whole life, those are the words I wanted to hear. And that veteran had shared that. And I know it might sound very, very strange to the people listening to this, but it was the moment where that connection. And then not only that moment, but at the very end, I had my free hug sign and I offered hugs to the veterans before they left the workshop. And most of them did. And one of them reminded me a lot of my dad. And I felt like after 28 years, I got to hug my dad. And it was just so beautiful. And witnessing, not only for me, but for the men in the room, to see them at the end, when we started, they were all sitting really low and looking very sad. And by the end, they were sitting taller and they were feeling good about them. And I realized sharing that, can I also say I feel badly also now after I shared that, because I'm very much a person about peace. And the military, I have such a challenge with and such a problem with. And at the same time, I have compassion that they're hurting human beings too. And my grandmother's voice comes back in my head, compassion for everyone, no exceptions. And so when someone's hurting, my first instinct is, how can I help? How can I help? How can I be of service? So that was, I mean, from an honest standpoint, that was the most powerful moment so far. And seeing people, like seeing women who were rescued from trafficking and abuse for the first time feel like they had worth and value. And it's not me. I'm simply the conduit for the tools. I'm not special. I'm just a conduit.
No, you are special. So
well, thank you.
Kristin, my next question is about the importance of storytelling and storytelling in today's life.
Yeah,
I'm sure you're somehow familiar with our culture. Iran also has a very rich culture when it comes to storytelling.
Yes.
But unfortunately, like many things else in the world, so not a lot of people these days do it in the traditional way. I mean, reading books, telling the stories for kids. They just play it on YouTube or just because it's kind of one way, in a way. It's not two-way. It's just one digital device, and which can be good. But I'm just saying the probably the mode and the medium changed.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about this. Do you think this COVID-19 situation, this pandemic, do you think it's a good opportunity for people to just do it old school? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that, because I see so much beauty coming out of this too. while I also acknowledge there's a lot of suffering, the beauty that's coming is that so many families now are together right now. And so they are telling stories again and sharing stories. And I actually wanted to tell you about a project. You might want to interview these people. There are two women that are currently in, oh my gosh, I want to say Qatar right now. And they're from Italy. And they're doing a project called Quarantine Stories.
Wow.
It's on YouTube. I can connect you to them. And it's beautiful work. And yes, storytelling now, people need stories more than ever, and for families. And it's beautiful that we can do it this way. This is a lovely connection. And I mean, you are so on point and correct when you say it's an opportunity to come together for families face to face, and either reading books to each other is so comforting and so beautiful. Sharing that with each other. You have a daughter, I would imagine that you read to her and your wife reads to her, and that's very powerful. And then remembering the cultural stories and being sure you share those and tell those. We need them more than ever for hope. We need it for hope.
Yeah, everyone has heard from me that my favorite quote is from Stephen King in the novella Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank, when he says, "Hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies." So we need to somehow remind ourselves that hope exists.
Yes.
So, Kristin, last question. I guess we have 4 or 5 minutes based on what I had in mind.
Okay.
So when I ask my students and my friends about this idea of just do something different, get out of your comfort zone, many of them said, because we have never had such experiences, to give us some examples. I don't know what to do. And I always say a long journey starts with a single step. So
yes.
You don't need to do something big. But I wanted to ask you, probably it's a weird question, but do you think you can give some ideas to people in general? What can they do? Especially now that something different, something that not a lot of people think they can do it. Just some ideas, rough ideas.
So here's the other thing. It doesn't even have to be different. It doesn't even have to be different. So take that pressure off, right? So it's thinking about if each person takes a moment and they just sit quietly for a few minutes. And one of the things I would ask the students to remember, what are those things you really liked doing when you were a young child? Some of those things could be things that are out of your comfort zone as an adult. So can I give an idea that's maybe so small, but could be really helpful for people? Sidewalk chalk. Going outside and making little messages on pavement with chalk on the sidewalk. Someone in the neighborhood where I'm staying right now did that, and it made me so happy the other day. And it was such a small thing. On connecting this way through technology, maybe someone plays the guitar and they could share a song on their Instagram account for other people, or through Telegram or through WhatsApp. Sharing your gifts, whatever they are, and not stopping yourself from doing it. Maybe you're a person who writes poetry, but you've never ever shared it with another person. The comfort zone stepping out would be, you're going to read one of your poems, or you're going to take a picture of it and post it online for someone. Maybe you're someone who's feeling very healthy and you have older neighbors, and stepping out of your comfort zone could be going to the grocery store for them so they don't have to go. That's huge right now. There are people who never sewed before who are making masks for people who need to have protective, and all of us should be doing that when we go to the grocery store right now anyway, or outside. So there are seemingly small things, but they make a big impact. So think about how you could do that. Maybe it's something like reading a story to someone. And right now we are doing more of this technically because we're not supposed to be close to each other, right? In your family, if you're in a home right now with other people, think of something you could share that you might not always do. I've seen so many wonderful videos of parodies of popular songs. And that's stepping out of comfort zone. And beyond COVID-19, now is a really good time to think about, 3 months from now, is there something that you want to share in your skill set that you could put out in the world? Maybe you start planning now. What do you want that to look like? But think about what are the skills that you have? What are the, and by the way, your skills are the gift. You don't have to think about like, well, I don't know, I'm not special, I don't have any gifts. Every single one of you has skills and gifts. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers it. And you're right, it doesn't have to be big. It can be seemingly small things that add up.
Yeah, exactly. And I told a couple of them that just you can start just writing your own story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Share it with other people, because we have as many stories as many people that we have in the world. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So much, Kristin, for being with us. I'm sure that when I edit the video and upload it, there will be a lot of people who want to connect to you. So I will, if you don't mind, I will share your website with them.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
and feel free to share my email too. Absolutely. They're welcome to connect. And if anybody wants to connect on social media, I'm on all the different things. So feel free to do that too. And I mean, thank you for the gloriousness. You're so amazing.